and this understanding of how the world was like feeding itself, how everything was like happening for greater reason, and how the light and dark were playing up against one another, and this like constant process of evolution towards growth, and that it was almost like there was nothing you could do to stop it. You just had to like surrender to it and trust that it was like serving a higher purpose. Okay. Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Right with Chloe show. This is kind of an exciting topic, a little bit controversial. My mother might shoot me. No, I'm kidding. But the topic is why I'm about to do another mushroom journey and why I did one before. So obviously, as a disclaimer, this is not for everyone. I'm not suggesting you go out and do one. I think this is something that has to come from your own body, from your own intuition. This is not my area of expertise. It's just something that I felt intuitively pulled towards, and work with a space holder or facilitator who I deeply, deeply trust and have already been working with for some time, for sessions separate from and without taking mushrooms already. So WTF happened in my last mushroom ceremony. My last mushroom ceremony was, I think, October 2023, so something like 9 months ago now. And really, I just remember I was doing these like weekly or fortnightly sessions with my dear friend and space holder, who's a somatic trauma worker. And I remember one day saying to her, like, I just feel really lost. I feel unsure about a couple of like major decisions that I need to make. Everything was just, a lot of things were coming up at once. And she suggested that we do a mushroom journey. I had never before been interested in taking mushrooms at all. It was not something that I felt was aligned for me. It was not something that I was curious about. It was not something that I believed would be helpful. And yet, for whatever reason, when she extended that invitation to me back in last October, my whole body just said yes. And so I just went with it. I just trusted it. So the next step was we did a normal somatic session, but with a very small dose of the mushroom so that she could find the right, level or something for my body. That ended up being like a fucking hectic session in itself. She said she only gave me like a tiny bit, and I ended up having these like wild, like past life visions. And she was like, okay, so we won't give you a lot for the normal session. And so then for the normal session, she came over at about 6 a.m, set up the space, prepared the drink, explained how everything would work, all of that kind of stuff. And then I think I drank the mushroom mixture at 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning. It ended up being like a 10-hour journey. Like, it was all day. By the time we finished, it was early evening. And I had no idea what to expect, but I just felt this sense of safety with her, and for some reason, deep surrender to the invitation. So it's a strange thing to try and describe what happened, but there's a few things I'm going to go through. It felt like I was just processing so much emotion all at once at this really rapid rate. Like, I'd done a lot of somatic and emotional processing before, and it was, it would be like one issue or one piece of clarity or one epiphany per like hour or 45-minute session. This just felt like this wild ride, almost like I was in a film of like just processing one issue and then processing next issue and getting clarity, and then processing another issue and getting clarity, and feeling all of the emotions. And I was really just focused on just staying present with the emotions and feeling the emotions as they were coming up, and just going with it. And so, yeah, I just feel like there was a lot of emotional processing. Another big thing that happened is I had like this vision of the interconnectedness of the universe, and how I haven't really articulated this out loud to anyone before. So I got this, like, I still remember it was like this vision and this understanding of how the world was like feeding itself, how everything was like happening for greater reason, and how the light and dark were playing up against one another, and this like constant process of evolution towards growth, and that it was almost like there was nothing you could do to stop it. You just had to like surrender to it and trust that it was like serving a higher purpose. And so I had like visions of like how that was happening on an energetic level within the universe. And it was like, I don't know, it was kind of bizarre, but it also gave me a lot of peace. Then I also, at one point, had an experience of a lot of pleasure starting to come into my body. And it was so curious, but I had so much resistance. So when there was like the grief and the sadness or the universe stuff, I was able to just surrender, flow, process, release. And when the pleasure started coming in, it was really freaking uncomfortable. Like, I literally felt like I could not hold the pleasure in my body. And it was like, it felt like almost like this, you know, if you ever get anxiety in your body, how there's this sense of just like wanting it to end. It was kind of like that, but the feeling wasn't anxiety or fear. The feeling was pleasure, but it was so uncomfortable in my body. And I remember afterwards just being like, wow, that is very, very curious and interesting. And funnily enough, I would say that's still something that I haven't actually resolved. But it's something that I'm starting to edge into or towards moving through and learning how to hold in my body. So I will keep you updated as that happens. And then the final thing that happened was that I processed emotion for another human for the first time in my life. So I remember sitting there, and all of the other stuff that was happening, I could tell that it was my own stuff. And then suddenly I started to feel this grief and sadness, and I just intuitively felt that it was not mine, that I was processing it for the woman who was holding space / facilitating the journey for me. And she was sitting on the floor next to me in my bedroom the whole time whilst I was on the bed. And I can't remember if I said something to her then. I think I said something to her then. And at that point, and I asked her, like, you know, I have this sense that I'm processing this for you. Is this true? Do you have this unresolved? Like, were you just like crying in the toilet while I was processing or something? Like, what's going on? And she said, like, no, she couldn't relate. And then, the next day or something like that, she called me and she was like, I've just, because I thought it was about her recent partner. Actually, when I mentioned it, I was like, I think it's about your recent partner. And she was like, no, I feel like that's processed, blah, blah. But the next day she called me and she's like, I've just been having all of this emotion coming in that you spoke about, but not about my recent partner, about the partner before. And I thought that I had resolved that. And all of a sudden there's just all of this stuff coming up to be witnessed and processed. So, and she's like, so I think you were actually processing on my behalf. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then we ended up going out for lunch like that day or the next day. And as we were sitting in this restaurant, this guy that she had been talking about literally walked into the restaurant as her and I were sitting there. And it was the most surreal thing ever. And then, yeah, she ended up going and processing that. But that was my first experience of actually realizing that I could process emotions for other people. So that's what happened in the last ceremony. In terms of why I'm doing the next one, when I was making some notes for this episode, I was just like asking myself, why am I doing this next one? And the thing that came to me was like, I have no freaking idea intellectually. I don't live my life from intellect. By and large, I live my life from intuition. And so things don't always have to make sense intellectually, actually, for me. I just try as much as possible to surrender to the body. But also, there is a sense lately that I've been feeling a bit lost and confused with my life purpose. So I'm a Muay Thai fighter, and honestly, that's probably the thing that brings me the greatest joy and pleasure in my life. It just feels like pleasure for me, this sport. However, I also have a sense that it is not my life purpose, that my life purpose is in writing and helping other people heal and coaching and all of these other things and inner work and trauma resolution. And so it is often confusing for me about like, well, do I just follow what lights me up, or do I actually prioritize what I feel is my life purpose? And honestly, it's been confusing for me at times, in the sense that I organize my entire life around my Muay Thai, and yet part of me feels like it's not my life purpose. But it just is the thing that lights me up. And so then even within my life purpose stuff, there's a few different strands. There is like my writing, but then there's also my coaching and my business. And sometimes it feels like I can't do both. Like I can't hold both my writing and my business and my coaching. And I seem to swing between thinking which one is more important. And indeed, my first book was published like almost 5 years ago now. And the reason I haven't yet published the next one is because my business has been taking up a lot of the space that my writing otherwise would have taken up. And so this is confusing, and I can feel myself very in my head about it. And, you know, it's funny, but before I started doing a lot of this somatic work, or even inner work and personal development, I just lived from intuition without second guessing it. And sometimes it feels, as I've started doing more personal development, more inner work, I've actually been living less from intuition, because I'm going into the intellect in order to understand what is happening, in order to then be able to break it down for other people. Because I've seen how few people are able to live from intuition, and yet it was something that I was just doing organically for so long. But then trying to break that down, it does require, and to teach other people, it requires going up into the intellect. And so at times that just leads to a lot of confusion for me. And then I've recently gone through a breakup, as many of you guys know. And as a result of my partner no longer taking up all of the space that he does in my life, all of a sudden, all of these fears and existential dreads are coming to the surface. Fear of death, fear of my parents passing, fear of not finding another partner, fear of the future. And it just feels like there is so much to process. And so I want to go and do this second mushroom journey as a way of processing some of that, but also just maybe getting some clarity for myself. And just figuring out like what I can let go of. What can I give myself permission to let go of? And what can I give myself permission to more fully devote myself to? because at the moment it's all a bit up in the air. So I hope that was helpful, and if this resonated, I would love it if you would share this with your loved ones, or give us a rating, or just send me a message on Instagram. I'm right_with_Chloe, and yeah, let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear from you. Sending love. If you're interested in coming into deeper connection with yourself and living in a way that is more fully expressed and authentic, I offer one-on-one somatic coaching as well as breathwork sessions with people. So these are 2 different styles of sessions. You can reach out to me, we can have a chat about which one is right for you. But basically, a breathwork session is where I guide you through a whole cycle of activation, release, and then deactivation, using the breath in order to process whatever is most alive in your body at that point. And then the somatic sessions are usually more skill development, where I guide you and show you how to feel emotions in your body, how to be present with sensation, how to ask your body about what she's trying to communicate to you. So check the link out below if you would like more information, or feel free to send me a DM and we can have a back and forth and have a chat about what might be useful for you.